Hey there, sisterhood. April here, and I'm so excited to launch you into the universe of What's Her Superpower. Superpowers, sisterhood, secrets revealed. What's Her Superpower explodes onto the scene, alternating between real talk solo episodes and electrifying guest interviews. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Today, I am so thrilled to have Erin Harris with us today. She is the founder of Undo, Rethink Your Thinking. So we're going to learn a little bit about her and what she does, and it's actually a nonprofit, right? It is not a for-profit business. All right.
That's correct.
So, Erin, tell us a little bit about you and where you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, thanks, April. So I was a 15-year educator. I've taught literally every single grade, K through 8, both between here in the Denver metro areas where we live and the DC metro area as well. And I've actually worked in and out of 9 different schools in my career, which was an incredibly informative journey for me. But right before the pandemic happened, I was actually up by Denver International Airport and was involved in a gang-related school shooting. No fatalities. We did have one student who was shot, and she did have multiple surgeries, and it was quite the recovery for her. But in my post-trauma recovery, I realized I needed to really process this trauma really productively, so it wasn't something that continued with me for the rest of my life. And so I did seek out mental health help, and just learn the most incredible tools and skills ever that I wish somebody had taught me 20 years ago. And so I made it my mission in that moment that I am going to get this material out to the world, to the right population, to people prior to trauma, prior to life getting really challenging, so that they have the tools to really navigate those challenges.
That's fantastic. Now, do you work with families? Do you work primarily with children, adults? Who do you work with?
Yeah. Statistically speaking, 26% of U.S. kids by the age of 4 experience trauma. So more than a quarter of American kids are experiencing trauma before 4. And so I always say we're not recreating the wheel. We're really just bringing the right material to the right demographic. Our end goal is truly, April, to get these skills to our kiddos, and then really embedding that habitual practice throughout their educational career. With that being said, we do firmly believe that these skills and tools are something that we all need, especially as we continue to navigate the complexities of our current world, the complexities of being in the stage of the internet and all that comes with that. And so we will offer, once our curriculum is fully built out for adults, we will have our curriculum available to pretty much anybody who wants to access our curriculum.
Right. Now, you talk about your curriculum. Are you doing in-person counseling, or are you doing, internet? How are you getting the training to people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was previously a for-profit, and I was teaching at small group here in the town that we live in. My husband's a police officer, and he was seeing such an intense mental health crisis, especially over the last couple of years. So originally our focus was very community-based and really helping support the kids that he was supporting and helping. But then we realized the need was much bigger than that. And so we have, I talk about equity in my work and my practice all the time as an educator. And to me, equity equals accessibility. We want to make sure that our curriculum is accessible to everybody. So we do have a curriculum team currently right now that is in the process of changing everything that I was doing that was paper-based into an online curriculum, really making it interactive, engaging. I personally, as an educator, am not the one to ever put a piece of paper or computer in front of my kids. But because we're not therapists, because teachers are not therapists, because we are not trained mental health professionals, and we don't want to engage in talk therapy per se, our goal is strictly just to teach the skills so that when life happens, what is a coping skill? Why is a coping skill beneficial? How do you utilize it, the coping skill? Things like that. We really want the kids to understand that. So we've created our program as very much a one-on-one experience between user and the computer, which again, as an educator is not my favorite practice, but given the sensitivity of the material and given the sensitivity of people's varying views on this type of work in the educational system, we really want to be respectful to that process. And we want to give the kids the privacy and the ability to really access the material in a way that feels safe and is safe. We always tell them nothing's going to ever be asked to be turned in. Your teachers aren't going to ever ask you these questions. We really want to make sure that our students know that they can do this really hard work and still be in a good spot.
Yeah, I love that. Now, are you focusing on certain ages, or is it just anyone under 18?
I mean, one of the hardest questions for me to answer this entire journey has been, who are you marketing this to? And I keep saying, everybody. One of my favorite quotes that I read recently was, just because you don't seek mental health help doesn't mean you don't have mental health issues. It's just you're relying on others to help you resolve them. I firmly believe we all have stuff, whatever it is. Trauma is this spectrum. A lot of times we hear the word trauma, we go right to something really, really intense, death or divorce or something really, really scarring. But trauma is a spectrum. And I'm going to give you an example. My father, when I was in high school, I didn't make the lacrosse team. And he said to me, "Erin, you're such a quitter." I was like, dang, I didn't quit. I just didn't make the team. But it's like that has given me a lot of trauma responses in my life. So to me, while I'm not mad at my dad for that, and I don't have any hard feelings, and it's not something that I'm going to therapy for, it is something that pops up in my brain on the regular when I'm thinking about not doing something. I'm like, "Erin, don't be a quitter. Don't prove your dad wrong. You're not a quitter." And that's a trauma response. Trauma really does impact our brains and how our brains develop, how our brains process. Actually, April, are you familiar with how your brain processes information at all and how the brain kind of works?
There are some days my brain works better than others, but why don't you tell us the technical and the more clinical part of that?
Yeah, perfect. And this is really when we talk about all these skills and tools, this is our end goal, is to help people really be productive processors. And so I'm going to give my daughter, who is 7, she loves to talk about the brain and give this whole spiel. So I'm going to give her version. But your thoughts, when they enter your brain, they enter right in the brain stem, your caveman part of your brain. That's where you get stuck a lot of times. If you're functioning in that part of your brain, you get stuck in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So you might, are you familiar with that terminology? Fight,
Yes.
flight, freeze. Okay. And then fawn is the additional one that a lot of times people are like, "What's that?" And it's sort of like crouching in a corner, just trying to be a little bit of a recluse, maybe quiet, not necessarily freeze, but really disconnecting. And so we're not very productive thinkers when our thoughts get stuck down there in the caveman part of our brain. So if we can use coping skills, or really a lot of these skills, if we can slow down our thought process and understand that we want to get our thoughts to the frontal part of our frontal lobe, we can be more productive thinkers. If our thoughts get stuck in this middle section of our brain, that's where we are very emotionally reactive. That's where a lot of times us women, we get a little bit stuck here because we feel things so deeply. But that's where we tend to be defensive or accusatory, blaming other people, projecting, not taking accountability, really stuck in those emotions. And again, our goal is to really process in that frontal lobe. That's where it's the last part of our brain to develop. It doesn't develop till we're at least 25. So that's why when you're a teenager and young adult, everything feels very challenging. It's because that logical part of your brain has not developed quite yet. And so again, I always use the analogy. Thank you. I always use the analogy. I appreciate it. Of your brain being like a filing cabinet. And if you have trauma that happens, in order to really help your brain protect itself, it's going to react in that flight, fight, or freeze, or fawn. And if you file that paper away in that filing cabinet back there, it's going to get crumpled. It's going to get smeared. It's going to get ripped. It's going to get all sorts of messed up. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to have trauma responses from that trauma because you didn't file it away correctly. And you'll have a lifetime of trauma trauma responses based on that trauma. And so our goal in our program is to really help people to make sure that when they are filing that paper away, they are filing in the frontal lobe so that later in life, they're able to really function without that trauma response being associated with that incident. And I apologize, I'm rambling, but I'm going to say one more thing on this thought. My husband, like I said, is a police officer. He's the mental health guy for his department. And they say the average human, I think it's something like 4 to 9 traumatic events in their lives is the average human. He, as a police officer, they say they experience 300 to 800 traumatic events in their lives. And so we talk a lot about this whole process in our house because I think it's very impossible for somebody to experience as much trauma as police officers do without being able to do this process almost instantaneously at this point. It's a process that it's slow to build a habit, but once you understand how beneficial it is to kind of get those thoughts through that process, you can do it much quicker. And so that's really what he does in order to make sure that when he has that 300 to 800 or however many traumatic experiences, each and every single one of those papers is really getting filed away correctly in our brains or his brain.
Yeah. And
did I answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then some.
Perfect. I'm a little passionate about the brain.
I get that. And I love that. And, and I think what most people have problem with is that when, just like you touched on, was they think that trauma has to be some big, like, oh, I wasn't in the Twin Towers. I wasn't, in war zones. I wasn't, but we just don't realize that it can be something as simple as your dad saying don't be a quitter.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
Yeah. And those kind of things stick with us. And it's funny, like I spent 20 years in the military, and it was amazing to me how few of these younger sailors coming in have no coping mechanisms, because it's like a girlfriend breaks up with them. The next thing I know, I'm in the emergency room getting them a psych eval because life as they know it has ended because a girlfriend has broke up with them. I'm like, honey, there's another one. It's like a bus. There's another one 5 minutes away. You just have to, open up and keep an eye out for it. But
I'll be honest, April, when we talk about the mental health crisis that we have going on in our country, I think there's 2 big demographics that we're seeing the largest mental health needs. I would say, and we've tried really hard in our programming to not actually say we're mental health, because we aren't actually mental health. We're just teaching the skills, which does help mental health. But I think we have 2 really big buckets of people that seem to be very much struggling. I think our teens and our young adults, they have been given access to all the world's knowledge, and nobody is able to really, or our generation, my generation, the generations before us are still trying to figure out how to help them process accessing that knowledge, right? They're seeing kids over in Ukraine getting bombed, and they can't, my husband always says, once you see something, you can't unsee it, And it's hard for us to give them the skills on how to process that sort of tragedy. So I'd say that our teens and our young adults are really, really struggling. I also think that one of the most inhumane narratives that we have had in our country is around our males and our boys. I think very much like you talked about that, breaking up with a girlfriend or having the girlfriend break up with them. I do think that men and boys have been told this narrative that they can't have emotions, and really understanding your emotions and understanding that it's not just anger, because that's what we default is to anger, but maybe it's frustration, maybe it's feeling lonely, taken advantage of, unappreciated. When we can really dig deeper into those emotions, we can A, articulate ourselves better, and B, understand our own thought processes to resolve those issues better. And so I do think that a lot of men and boys default just to anger and are really unsure how to process or move forward with that anger. And so it just kind of builds up. So yeah, I think our two big demographics, I would say, is our young adults and our teens, and our males and our boy population, I think are really struggling. And I think we should focus our energy more on how can we help them and support them and help them on this journey.
Yeah, and men's roles have changed so much over the years because they used to be the provider, they're the ones that went out and, killed whatever, brought it home. They were the provider. But over the years, as women's roles have changed, men have had to adapt to that, but they're still, and some of that comes from family, oh, well, you can't, your wife can't work. She can't make more money than you. What kind of man are you not providing? And this has been instilled in them, and they have no outlet. Usually it does go to anger, but they have no outlet to what are your emotions. It's okay to have those emotions. So, and I saw that a lot in the military.
Yeah. In the military, my husband's a former vet too, and so I was married to him while he was in the military, and I saw the same thing. Are you familiar with the verbiage or the concept cognitive dissonance?
I've heard of it. I couldn't.
I'm going to give a quick
okay
example. I'm not a smoker, so it's maybe not the best example. But I talk about cognitive dissonance with my teenagers a lot. And it's basically this sort of like smokers have this one thought in their brain, or this one side of their brains thinking, I should stop smoking. It's costing me a lot of money. It's making me smell this way. It's not helping my health. And then the other side of their brain is thinking, but it brings me calm. It feeds my addiction. I can't stop. I need it. So they have these like sort of juxtaposition, conflicting ideologies in their brain, right? Mm-hmm. Some people equate it to the good versus the evil, but it's not quite the same because there's no like, neither is good or evil. It's just conflicting ideologies. And I talk about this with my teenagers because I think the more we can destigmatize the human experience and we can really just say what you're going through is totally normal. Everybody thinks about not wanting to exist on this planet. And we try to really reframe that of like, maybe in this moment you don't want to exist. It's not that for forever you don't want to exist. Same thing here, right? If we can understand that it's very confusing when you're a teenager and a young adult because you're moving from like your parents' view of the world and their understanding of the world is everything you know and understand, to like having access to all the world's knowledge and really trying to decipher like what is my reality versus what was the reality my parents instilled in me. And so that internal turmoil and that confusion that can happen in those stages is really, really impactful. And the more we can destigmatize that, the more we can have people getting through it and surviving it. But you were talking about men and boys, and I think that equally there is that cognitive dissonance there as well. I think that there is a huge like push for men to be more gentle and loving and nurturing and part of the family, and maybe being more of a techie guy versus being a hands-on woodworker guy. And then I do see these kind of this in our culture and our, social medias and stuff where it's like these super alpha dudes who are doing hard manual work are like dogging on the dudes who are like maybe wearing skinnier jeans and sitting on a computer or whatever, like there's just sort of this back and forth. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in there because there's been narratives for every man or boy's life of who they should be. How should they show up, to be a provider or whatever, to be the rock. But then there's all these women who are like, but I don't want you to just be my rock and my provider. I want you to be my partner, and I want you to hold me when I cry, and I want you to nurture me. And you know what I mean? So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance and like, how do I show up in society right now?
Yeah. And we all go through that, and we go through it at different stages in our life, and you touched on like having what our parents have told us, vice what we're learning and what we're seeing in the world. And it's just like, whether it's our dream, our careers, our values, it is a process I'm in my 50s, closer to 60, and I'm just to the point now where I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I believe in, and this is what is important to me. And I think that really comes with a lot of self-development, and it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing I want people to understand is we're not saying this is easy. but if someone can give you the tools, and especially for these kids, don't wait till you're in your 50s to learn the tools to deal with life.
And it's a never ending journey. So I'm going to give you a quick little background. I've been trying to get my parents into therapy with me for 3 years. We've been having an ongoing, never ending fight. And on Christmas Eve, my father actually called me and gave me the best Christmas present ever. And he said that he will absolutely listen to me. My mother said she would go to therapy with me. They are ready to start resolving the issues and really move forward.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But one of the things, thank you, it was a big achievement. And I'm really excited to feel, whole again and really find that part of my life back in my being. But I think one of the biggest challenges, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought now. What were you just talking about? Never ending journey. One of the biggest challenges throughout that 3 years of I just want my parents to go to therapy. I've had so many people who are they're in their 70s. They're never going to change. Erin, just move on, let them be. And I'm a very firm believer that we as people, we are always learning. We should always strive to be growing and doing better no matter what age. And so I appreciate that, at your age, you're feeling okay, I'm getting this. I'm understanding who I am. I'm solid and who I am. And I think that that's totally part of the human journey, is that we go through these ebbs and flows. And I thought I knew who I was when I was 16. And now I'm no, I actually know who I am. But I hope to always be learning and developing and growing and continuing to feel that way.
Yeah, it trust me, it will change. It's because you go through different stages of your life. Like when I got out of the military, when my husband and I both retired, he just seemed to really transition easy. And I don't know if he just kept it inside, talk about that man thing. If he just kept it inside. But I know I was after 20 years of, I know where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there. I even know what to wear. And it was definitely a process to figure out, okay, was that the military side of me, or, who am I really at my core? And I've had I haven't gone through therapy, but I've gone through and worked. I've read a lot of books. I've worked with some friends who, do different things and been in groups, and it is definitely a process. So, yeah. But one that is worth it. So if you're sitting there and you're listening to this and you're in your car and you're like, oh, I don't have trauma. We're not saying you do. But if you don't, you're probably of the 0.0001% of the population that doesn't. And it could be something small. So, just talk to somebody. It doesn't hurt to talk to somebody.
Yeah. 100%.
So your nonprofit, how do you get the word out about your nonprofit?
Yeah, right now we are really transitioning from the paper-based to the online curriculum. So right now we're really looking for people we are a team of about 40 volunteers. We're all 100% volunteers at this point. Actually, I think we're over 40, coast to coast, but we are always looking for more volunteers. So if you're looking to get involved, you can check us out online, www.undomindset.com. We are also looking for folks who want to join our board, folks who want to get out to communities and start helping, folks who want to maybe sit on our boards in various states. We're always looking for people to join our movement. I think it's something we are all so passionate about. I think it's something we all see the need for. I always tell people I think we probably should have done this 20 years ago. So let's hurry up and get it done now.
Well, we will definitely drop all her contact information in the comment section so you can check it out. I've got 2 questions for you just to end. So as a female, because that's really what this podcast is focusing on, is women empowerment. And I hate to use the word empowerment because I think it's overused, but definitely connections, what is your superpower that you feel like you bring to your nonprofit, to the people that you help as a female?
Yeah. I was an educator for 15 years. And so just about every meeting I sit on, I always say, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never started a nonprofit. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make us get in that direction. But one of the things I do think is a strength of mine in general in life is I'm really good at connecting people. I'm really good at approaching people and getting to the core of who they are and figuring out how they could fit into our puzzle piece. So I have connected a lot of really incredibly capable human beings who do know how to run a nonprofit, thank goodness, and are able to sort of steer our ship in the right direction. And so I would say my superpower is really finding the people, connecting the people, supporting the people in the work that they're doing, and then just being a point of connection between all of our various different people in the group.
I love that. What is your, you know what? I'm going to change the question because I was going to ask you your goal, but when you said connection, that is actually my word for 2024. So what is your word
I love
for
it.
2024?
Oh, that's a good one. What is my word for 2024? I think I'm going to go with fearless. I think fearless is going to be my word for 2024. One of the things that will stop you in your tracks when you're doing this type of work is fear. There is not a day that goes by that I don't have imposter syndrome. There is not a day that goes by that I think, oh my gosh, if we actually make it to our end goal and become a free program for all K-12s coast to coast, can I actually still run an organization that large? Should I hire somebody else to take over for me because I don't know what I'm doing? And so I think really approaching this year, believing in myself, believing in us as an organization, and really being fearless, knowing that with challenges, with hurdles comes greater growth and more strength. So approaching those challenges fearlessly.
I love that. Well, we will be cheering you on because what you are doing needs to get out to the world. And, you are going to be fearless, bringing it to everybody that, that can hear your voice. All right. Thanks so much, Erin. I appreciate it.
Thanks, April.
Bye. Forget unicorns. Unlock your true potential with actionable tips, inspiring stories, and a whole lot of laughs. Join the mission. Subscribe now. Find your own What's Her Superpower. Join the mission.